Okay, I'm going to get started. Today we have the criminal law section of the materials uh, that we're going to have an exam on Wednesday. And then we're also going to cover the second part of this session. We're going to cover agency, which is the exam we have in 9 days. So, ready or not, here it comes. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Let's see if I can get this. Okay, my screen is being shared. There is a reminder on the board that the meeting is being recorded. It is being streamed live on the class YouTube channel. And it is also going to be recorded there for your classmates and others to see 24/7. So please do not uh, make any comments or ask any questions or divulge any information that is personal to you and you only, that you don't that you wouldn't mind sharing to the world. Limit your questions to those of a general nature only. Okay. Let's see. First, a bit of housekeeping. I have tweaked the grades on your gradebook on Canvas, and they should be accurate now, and should have generally, for most students, taken out their lowest two grades and drop the lowest two grades, and your average that is shown is your average of your grades that do not include the two lowest exam grades. Now, that does not count the attendance verification quiz that was only worth 10 points. So that one will count, even if you made a zero, which nobody made a zero on. Even if you made a zero on that, it wouldn't hurt you that much if you 10 points for that. Dropping another test grade would help you much more. If for some reason at the end of the semester it would help you to drop your attendance verification quiz and not one of your other two lowest test grades, I will certainly do that. I don't mean for it to hurt you. I don't think it can. I don't think there ever will be a scenario where that could be the case. But regardless, I'm going to uh, allow you to drop whatever um, benefits you the most with that. That does not include any exam grade in which you received a zero academically as a result of a disciplinary action. There have been some occasions of that so far. You probably know who you are if that has occurred to you. If you don't have any concerns about that, then don't worry about that. But uh, needless to say, um, you need to be sure and comply with all the rules, not only of this class but also of Jeff State when you take this class. As I said, there have already been several disciplinary actions that have been taken, and there may be others that, upon further investigation, we do as well. Okay, getting that out of the way and that housekeeping out of the way, your criminal law. Let's see. I want to make sure that I am sharing the right screen. Okay. Yes. I'm admitting a couple more people. I am sharing the right screen. Now you should have on your screen a criminal law, some scratchings for me. I will tell you this, that
Joan Sutherland sneak out the back to avoid the critic from the Times. Imagine.
okay, I don't know who Vincent is, but I just muted you.
So a person could come here, pay, and make a quick exit without being noticed.
I'm muting you again, and if we need to, we'll boot you from that. Do not unmute without sending me a message through the message system first, just to make sure that it's not causing some problems. Okay. I don't really. I think it's got to be legitimate, but I don't. I don't recognize the name. Okay. All right. Good enough. Just stay muted. If you have a question, certainly unmute yourself. I'm not prohibiting you from doing that. There's no punishment there as well. Okay. Criminal law. Your criminal law exam will be much the same as the previous exam. You're going to have a number of short answer type questions that will be inclusive of the materials. I am very, very serious about you studying the materials. Um, as I said, there have been a couple of students who have been expelled from the class, at least, that have not complied with the rules. And these kind of things are not things that I find pleasant. I don't like dealing with it, but it's just not fair to people who are trying to learn correctly. So, in any event, let's go through some of the things that are, I think, more problematic than others. Um, Actus reus and mens rea. Generally, those are required for almost every crime to exist. They are There are some exceptions in which someone generally has engaged in conduct that's so culpable otherwise that they don't necessarily have to form the appropriate mens rea. But generally, this is one of those that the general rule really does control most of the time. Uh, I'm I hit hard on the Fifth Amendment and various ways that it is applied. What does it do? What does double jeopardy really mean? You're going to need to know that pretty backwards and forwards. It is a complex issue. Um, there are issues related to uh, protection from. Is it just protection from criminal prosecution in the same court, in a different court? And what about state versus federal? What about civil actions? How does it apply in those kind of situations? This is a complex issue. It is a situation where you do have to know this backwards and forward. Fourth Amendment, the privilege against self-incrimination and protection against not the privilege against self-incrimination. I'm sorry, strike that. The protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, and there's a whole lot more to it than that. But we need to know at least the basics. The exclusionary rule, fruit of the poisonous tree. How does the Fourth Amendment apply if it's a business? What are the exceptions to the Fourth Amendment as it relates to a business? I would certainly recommend that you know that. Corporate criminals. How does that work? Can a corporation be held criminally responsible? How do you put them in jail? What does that mean? How do you do that? How are they punished? Know that really well, because there's more than a single question, I believe, on that too. Burden of proof. Civil, I like to call it the gray poupon preponderance of the evidence. I'm really showing my age on a lot of these things. I know a lot of you. If you've never seen that TV commercial, YouTube it for gray poupon, and I don't know if it's a Rolls Royce or something. You can find it. Y'all are good at that kind of thing. Um, Pardon me, sir. Do you have any gray poupon? And the chauffeur rolls down his window, and I think it's funny. But preponderance of the evidence and beyond a reasonable doubt. How do they work? How do they apply? Are they Um, are they similar? What does beyond a reasonable doubt really mean? Um, and I'm serious about that, and serious about knowing how that works in terms of specific cases and things. Be precise with respect to your answers on that. Criminal law versus an intentional tort, are they mutually exclusive? And what I mean by that is the same act, the same action that's taken. Um, if is there an election? Do you have to say, well, I'm just going to prosecute this criminally, or I'm just going to pursue this as a civil matter? How does that work? How are they similar? What about the burden of proof in those situations? Can you have inconsistent verdicts? Um, does the Fifth Amendment protection against double jeopardy protect you in some way with that? Don't think there's a lot on the statute of limitations, but certainly it's something that I think that you should know. It's a I always tell people that the statute of limitations is the very best defense that you can have. People say, "What about the defense if I didn't do it?" I said, "Give me the statute of limitations of the as a defense that the statute expired for you to pursue any action against me, and I'll take that 100 times out of 100. I don't have to prove anything. It is what it is, and what it is it's gone. Their ability to pursue that is gone. So that's certainly a major part of the defense of a statute of limitations. I think the last thing that I'm going to talk about, I don't think there's anything on this next page. Yeah, I just had gotten that kind of typed. The last thing that I want to talk about, and again, this does not necessarily mean that this is everything on the exam. There will be other things on the exam. I just like to um, point out, give you a few tips, little pointers, almost last minute things sometimes after you've already done some studying, and also to provide myself here in case you are interested in asking me any questions. I'm certainly here for that. I'm going to. Okay, you've got yourself muted. Thank you. Um, the last thing I want to talk about is the Miranda rights. This is something. Oh my gosh, I go down the Facebook, Instagram, um, uh, uh, where I'm just spiraling out of control watching these videos of individuals pulled over for DUI or speeding or something like that, and golly, I mean, it's funny to me to watch how many people are ignorant of what this really means. The Miranda rights, by the way, let's say that they do apply. It doesn't mean that if they fail to give you your Miranda warnings, you get out of jail free card. All it means is that, gee whiz, if they didn't tell you that your words can be held against you, all these kind of things, then they can't use your words against you. So if they've got you dead to rights on something, they can just lock you up and not worry about the Miranda rights, because it's not going to be this wonderful get out of jail free card that a lot of people think. When does it actually, but let's assume that it does have relevance in a particular situation. When does it actually apply? When is it required? If they walk up to you and they start asking you questions, do they have to give you a Miranda warning? No. If you're free to go, you don't. Now, if they've got you in custody, sure, they've got to give you a Miranda warning. Again, the consequences of doing it may not be that severe, or it could be. You just have to look at the circumstances. But the question really is, when does it begin? Is it always required? You need to know when and how and who it applies to and that kind of thing in order to answer the questions on the exam about Miranda warnings. And there's at least one question I recall for sure about that. So if you paid attention to here, I would guess that this is at least 50% of the exam that I've just given you, more or less, and kind of told you what it's going to be. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you every single thing, but it's 50, 60% maybe of the exam, maybe more than that. Just comes from this little cheat sheet and the information that I've discussed here. Before I move on to agency, which is a week from Wednesday, are there any questions about criminal law that I can answer for you? Okay, I don't hear any, and I don't think there are any in the chat. Yeah, there's nothing in the chat either. So I'm going to go ahead and move to agency, and we can talk about that. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and then get to pull this back up and share the screen again. Okay, you should have my little notes on agency law. I will tell you, I don't have the exam prepared yet, but this is good for me too, because it kind of reviews for me what I want to cover on the exam when I'm preparing the exam. Agency law is really important. A lot of people don't think it's that critical, because they usually find this area of law a little easier than some of the other areas. And that's good. Good for you and good for your grades, hopefully. Um, the things that I typically like to focus on the exam, the things that I want you to really make sure that you hone in on, in addition to everything else. People say what I need to know, and I say everything. It's rare that I'll tell you don't need to know something. So you need to know everything, but for sure you need to know the things that we're going to cover here. Independent contractor versus an employee. What's the difference between those things? What are the factors that determine it? Can you identify that in a fact pattern? It's not going to be you found 7 factors that said this and 6 that said that, and because of that, the one with 7 factors is going to be necessarily be the case. It's not necessarily going to be that, but you're going to need to kind of figure that out. And I will tell you that when I write the questions for the exam, I'll make it pretty clear which one it is, based upon factors that we've discussed in class, the lecture, questions that I've had from students, etc. But you need to know that, be able to recognize that. Then you need to know, what are the consequences of that? Well, what if I correctly identified them as an independent contractor? What then? What does that mean? What if I correctly identified them as an employee? What then? What does that mean? Uh, do they have the power to bind the principal in a contract? Do they have the power to take some act or cause some action that would create liability for the company, the employer in the case of an employee, and the company in the case of an independent contractor? In various situations, as you're going through and studying this material, you need to be thinking about those things. It's at least a 2-step process. Gee, what is their classification first, and then what does that mean in this particular scenario, in this particular situation? What is required to be an agent? And this is kind of interesting. And I know we haven't done contract law. Contract law is one of the last things that we cover. But in contract law, we're gonna talk about things that make a contract void or valid or voidable, kind of something in between. And some of it may deal with capacity to, whether or not they're competent, may have to do with their age, may have to do with a number of different things. And in an agency situation, some of those things don't apply. Sounds like it should if you're going to be an agent for me. And I don't mean just, an insurance agent for an insurance company. I mean someone representing the company for which you are working. It may not require some of the elements of a contract. So you need to be aware of those things. Typically on agency by estoppel, agency by ratification, agency by necessity, I usually don't require you to know specifically which one it is, but just recognize how these individual things come up. What is it that causes an agency to exist when it's an agency by estoppel? What is it that exists when an agency relationship exists because it's an agency by ratification? What things must occur for an agency relationship to exist if it's an agency by necessity? In the case of an agency by ratification, typically I like to deal with this. What happens if there's a partial ratification? Does it have to be all or nothing, or can you partially ratify a contract, for example? One of the things that I always talk about and I always test on, because I think it's very important in our everyday lives, not just in business, but also in business, but also in our everyday lives, are powers of attorney. It's a power of attorney is a specific type of agency relationship that's done with a written document that's a contract. And there are different types of powers of attorney, different types in Alabama and most states. Generally, I talk about durable powers of attorney and non-durable powers of attorney. What does that mean? When does a non-durable power of attorney expire? When does a durable power of attorney expire? Which one applies, if either one, after someone becomes incompetent or after someone dies? You need to know these kind of things. The respondeat superior doctrine. It's a legal principle that requires the company, the employer, to be responsible for the actions of their agent, the employee. But when does that apply? Does it apply on everything? If I hire you to assist me with writing a brief and you go out and you rob a gas station, am I responsible for that just because you're my employee? Of course not. You know that. That's one of those situations where even without a legal background, you know what was probably right. But why? Why is that the case? What causes me as the employer to be liable for you as my employee and the actions that you take? What is it that causes that? That's something that you'll have to know. Apparent authority. When someone doesn't have actual authority, but it looks like, it smells like, it tastes like, it feels like they should have the authority. Do they have the authority? There was a boss of mine years and years and years ago. that used to say, perception is reality. Used to say it all the time. And we talked about it and we were like, you know, it's not really reality, but it acts that way because people take action based upon their perception of something. Well, apparent authority is a little bit like that, except it has a legal basis for that. And you need to know when that legal basis applies and how it applies. Okay, I think that's all that I have on that. I think this next page is some typewritten stuff. Yeah. I use a remarkable tablet. That's I use the Remarkable 2. I can't afford the color one, black and white one, and it will convert my chicken scratching handwriting to typing. And I actually did a decent job with it. It's all kind of messy like that, but probably can read that a little bit better than mine. Even though there's no such thing as dowers of attorney, it is powers of attorney. Anyway, that's all that I have for agency. So I've spent about, I guess 10 minutes on each of them, about 5 minutes on housekeeping matters at the beginning of this. I will ask you if you have any questions about agency, and I'll also go back and I'll open back up if you've got any questions about criminal law. I will entertain those at this time now as well. Thank you guys for showing up. I feel good that several of you showed up today. I'm pleased with that. It makes me feel good. And that's just water in here, by the way. Even though it is 7:30, I guess I could have something. I'm going to the gym right now, so. Okay. Well, if I don't have any questions or any comments, we'll close this for tonight. Good luck with the test on Wednesday. If there's something that I can do, you can always hit me up after this. This is not the only opportunity that you have to ask me questions or talk with me about some issue. Feel free to do so. If I can help you in the class in some way, I am more than happy to attempt to try to do that. Good luck with the exam Wednesday. I will see you next time. Thanks.